Hello and welcome to Hopeful Moments 1. Today, we will hear a story about the conflict between meeting work metrics and maintaining work quality, especially in complex projects. Today's story will take you through a surprising situation. From losing important staff to the challenges the boss faces with management strategy failures. If you find this story interesting and full of meaningful lessons, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to hear more valuable lessons. I have worked at this tech company for nearly 7 years. This was my first job after graduation. It's a great company, thriving with good benefits, and most importantly, an amazing boss. My boss was always ready to help and provide feedback quickly, always supporting the team, striving not to micromanage, not caring as long as the work was done. He nearly forced everyone to take time off. We had unlimited vacation, and I averaged 30 to 40 days off per year, and believed in giving raises and promotions to good employees. In the last 3 years, I received raises of 9%, 13%, and a promotion, along with a 7% salary increase. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we worked remotely. Seeing this as an opportunity to balance life and reduce living costs, I requested to modify my contract to switch to full-time remote work. This allowed me to leave the city with high living costs where the company was headquartered and move back to my hometown. My boss not only agreed to this request immediately but also strongly supported it when HR suggested adjusting my salary to fit the cost of living in the new area. He firmly declined, arguing that I would still be doing the same workload, and that the quality of my work would not change, no matter where I worked. My boss was so great that in our team of 16 people, no one had less than 3.5 years of experience, a clear testament to the ideal work environment he had created. Personally, even though I had received several offers with higher salaries over the years, my commitment to the team, the environment, and my boss's inspiring leadership style made it impossible for me to think about leaving. My colleague and I specialized in executing highly complex and important projects, completely different from the daily work of the team. For over 4 years, we not only took on these tasks but also became the company's knowledge source in this area. Recognizing its importance, my boss fully trusted us to manage this area. As the workload grew significantly, we recruited and trained 2 additional team members to support our specialized subgroup. What's worth noting is that no project was sent to the client without the involvement and thorough review from one of the 4 of us. These projects were highly complex, with significant risks. Even a single mistake could lead to hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in losses. Since this was also the fastest growing area in the company, we were always busy meeting the demand. About 2 years ago, my boss was promoted from vice president to senior vice president, SVP, and a new vice president was hired to replace him. This new vice president quickly tried to change many aspects of the operations, implementing a metrics-focused approach, even when it didn't really make sense or fit with our work. A prime example was the requirement to track the number of projects each team member completed each month. Whether a project took 2 weeks or just 1 hour to complete, it was counted the same, making this metric practically meaningless. Furthermore, the new goals required projects to be completed faster, regardless of the nature of the work. For instance, even if a project deadline was a week, we were pressured to complete it in less than 3 days, leading to unnecessary stress and the risk of reduced quality. Additionally, the new vice president tried to change how work was distributed within the team. Instead of letting team members choose tasks from a common list, an approach that had worked well and motivated us, he wanted my boss to directly assign tasks to each person. This not only reduced flexibility but also impacted the team's sense of autonomy. My boss tried his best to oppose the new vice president's demands but continued to face constant criticism from upper management. These criticisms focused on unrealistic and useless performance metrics the vice president wanted to apply, even though they were completely unsuitable for the team's work. This was especially unfair, as my boss's team was the most experienced in the company, handling the largest workload and dealing with more complex projects than any other team. Despite always maintaining high performance and achieving excellent results, the team was still forced to comply with the new vice president's unrealistic expectations. This not only created unnecessary pressure but also diminished the recognition that the team truly deserved for their contributions. my boss's efforts to protect the team from unreasonable demands seemed to go unrecognized, further straining relationships between the leadership levels. Around 9 months ago, my boss decided to leave the company after being unable to endure the constant pressure and criticism from the new vice president. This was a huge loss, as my boss had been with the company for 13 years and was one of the first employees who laid the foundation for the current success. His decision left a difficult-to-fill gap, leaving the entire team incredibly disappointed. Aware of the need to maintain the spirit and work philosophy left by our boss, we immediately started advocating for the promotion of one of the most senior members of our team. She not only had years of experience but also shared the same leadership philosophy, focusing on supporting and empowering the team rather than imposing control. To us, she was the ideal successor to continue the positive work culture our former boss had built. The vice president organized interviews to find a replacement for the management position, including internal candidates with the longest tenure in our team, as well as some external candidates. However, instead of choosing someone with experience and a deep understanding of the team's work, he decided to appoint a candidate from his previous company. From this point on, this person will be referred to as the bitch boss because of the negative actions and attitudes she brought, which will be clarified here. As soon as she took the new position, she began to dismantle the team from the ground up. The processes that had been refined and proven effective over the years were arbitrarily changed without any consultation or listening to the team's input. Her management style became extremely micromanaged, controlling even the smallest details, which undermined our autonomy and creativity, our team's strengths. As a result, the team's morale quickly plummeted drastically. In less than a month, our team, once the best in the company, fell to the bottom, with productivity at an all-time low. It took her about 2 months to turn her attention to our small subgroup and begin attempting to change the way we worked. However, instead of gaining a deeper understanding of the nature of our work, she applied micromanagement in a clueless manner, causing project delays and creating a series of unnecessary problems. Worse yet, she started criticizing us, the 4 of us in the team, over the performance metrics she deemed the worst in the group. Yet, she completely ignored the fact that we were handling complex projects that required 10 to 100 times longer than most of the work done by other members. The bitch boss clearly warned us that if we did not meet the metrics she required, we would be placed in a performance improvement plan, PIP. Under this pressure, we decided to comply and shift our focus to simpler projects, those that were easy to complete and would help us meet the required metrics, completing projects per month, rather than continuing with the complex ones. This meant leaving the important projects that required more time and effort on the waiting list, as we couldn't meet both quantity and quality demands at the same time. This sudden change caused a wave of chaos in the company, as our small subgroup had to stop taking on complex projects and only focus on tasks that easily met metrics. After a short time, the sales team started panicking due to delays in transaction progress. This directly threatened their commissions, especially from the complex projects they had previously expected to generate significant revenue. When the sales team began questioning us about the progress of complex projects, we all gave the same response: bitch boss has required us to focus entirely on meeting the X metrics, so we have to prioritize the simpler tasks to meet the requirements. Unfortunately, we cannot continue with the complex projects anymore. Please contact bitch boss directly to resolve this issue. This response was clearly not welcomed by her or the vice president, as it led to a series of complaints that the vice president had to deal with. After a tense meeting, they asked us to return to the complex projects. However, we firmly refused, as doing so would prevent us from meeting the required metrics. Although they disagreed with dropping the metrics, they still insisted we work on the complex projects, as we were the only ones with the necessary knowledge. We continued to refuse, which led to a series of complaints from the sales team, until the senior vice president intervened. The senior vice president, who had built this complex subgroup from the beginning and had always supported us in previous issues, stood against the vice president and the bitch boss. He declared that we should not be measured by metrics and could continue managing the complex projects without fear of being placed in the PIP. Finally, we returned to our previous work style. By this time, the remaining 3 members of the subgroup had become fully aware of the situation and began actively applying for new jobs, hoping to leave immediately. They all worked in offices in high-cost areas, and the sudden policy change from the bitch boss made the situation even more tense. She decided to change the team's policy from working in the office only 1 to 2 days a week to requiring mandatory 3 days in the office, even though this contradicted company policies. This added more hardship and inconvenience for them, while I was luckier as I could still work remotely. I didn't apply for new jobs immediately because I was very busy with work and had already been approved by my former boss for 2 weeks of vacation for my wedding and honeymoon before he left. This happened to coincide with the period 3 months after the bitch boss started, and just 1 month after the issues with the Performance Improvement Plan, PIP. The bitch boss was extremely angry because we had embarrassed her in front of the senior vice president, and she relentlessly tried to make our lives harder, attempting to make everything even more difficult for us. During that month, my best friend, along with an extremely experienced member of the subgroup, got new jobs and left without prior notice. Another member also resigned and would leave in just a week. We were already extremely busy, and still dealing with the consequences of the PIP, so losing half the subgroup made everything worse. Furthermore, with low morale, we lacked motivation to work overtime or to complete tasks quickly. In fact, the whole team was severely delayed as, by that time, up to 6 of the 16 people had either left or were in the process of resigning. Then, the bitch boss decided to cancel my approved wedding and honeymoon vacation because the team was behind schedule. She notified me via Zoom. I told her I could not skip my wedding and honeymoon for work, and I would take the full vacation as agreed. If she wanted to lose another member of the subgroup for 2 weeks or permanently, that was her decision. She immediately threatened, yelled at me, and made threats until I ended the Zoom call. She later sent an email confirming that my vacation was canceled, and if I didn't show up for work, it would be considered as job abandonment. I didn't believe her threats and decided to respond, CCing the vice president, senior vice president, and some other sales vice presidents I frequently worked with. In the email, I explained the situation, that it was my wedding and honeymoon, expressed my appreciation for the opportunity, but simultaneously confirmed I would resign immediately without notice due to the lack of respect from the bitch boss. Immediately, I received messages from the senior vice president and several sales VPs, asking me not to quit. The email chain became very tense, with complaints about my team being mismanaged by the bitch boss, and now the complex deals were at risk because I wasn't there to handle them. The senior VP finally stopped the conversation, but it was quite a stressful experience. I decided not to reply to Slack messages or work the entire day. I just turned off all devices and went to a bar to enjoy some personal time. The next morning, I woke up late and very hungover, receiving several calls from the senior VP, asking me to call back. In the afternoon, I called back and spoke with the senior VP. He was very understanding and asked me to return to work. He listened to all my complaints and made an attractive offer. Specifically, if I returned to work during the week and tried to train a few team members to handle complex projects while I took my leave, he would give me a wedding bonus of $3,000. Additionally, I would get all my leave time, and when I returned, the bitch boss would not interfere with my work anymore. I would also have the authority to manage the complex projects again and could choose 2 more people to train long-term to supplement those who had left. Since my wedding was extremely expensive, I accepted the offer. I then tried to train everyone so they could cover for me, an almost impossible task, and took my leave. My wedding and honeymoon were wonderful. However, the senior VP called me several times when the 4th member of my sub-team abruptly left about a week and a half later. I ignored his calls and did not respond. When I came back, I was mentally prepared to face the chaotic situation awaiting me. Everything was really tense. The entire sales team kept sending Slack and emails continuously, asking for the completion of complex projects that had been delayed for the past 2 weeks. The people I had trained quickly before my leave could not complete almost any tasks. A massive workload was waiting because half of the original team had left. Feeling the pressure, I decided to turn off Slack and email the sales VPs directly, asking them to provide a list of priorities for the complex deals that needed to be completed. After receiving the list, I got to work, without any overtime. Despite the tough situation, I firmly refused to work extra hours. During this time, the bitch boss never attempted to talk to or interfere with my work. The senior VP tried to contact me a few times and even asked me to work on the weekend to catch up on progress, but I still refused. This process lasted nearly a month. Although the bitch boss never mentioned my training of replacements for the sub-team, I didn't bring it up either. However, the larger team was tasked with trying smaller complex projects to help speed things up. They also hired additional new staff for the larger team. However, the meticulous training process that my former boss had built over 4 to 6 months was completely disregarded, and these new employees were thrown into difficult situations, leading to serious mistakes and the company suffering significant financial losses. By the time of the annual bonus and salary increase, I had started looking for new opportunities right after returning from my honeymoon. I attended several interviews and got close to the final stages of a few opportunities, but had not yet received any official offers. One day, I received a Zoom call from the bitch boss to discuss my bonus and salary increase. She thought giving me only 80% of the projected bonus, the lowest possible amount, and a 0% raise was a reasonable decision. She listed a series of unconvincing reasons, such as my lack of cooperation, poor work performance, and even blamed me for the mistakes made by the new employees. I didn't argue or protest because by then, I had lost interest. In fact, I had already started quietly reducing my productivity. I only completed the minimum work and waited for the next payday to get my wedding and honeymoon bonus. After that, I sent in my resignation letter. 3 days passed with no response from her. Finally, after all the stress, disrespect, and wrong decisions from the leadership, I realized that a work environment lacking both support and recognition for each individual's value will demotivate people and lead to poor decisions. Unreasonable changes in management processes, lack of understanding, and unfair criticism can break even a strong team, reducing productivity and morale. The lesson I learned is that a work environment is not just about money or fame, but about respect, recognition, and mutual understanding between leadership and employees. If a leader doesn't listen, doesn't leverage the team's strengths, and only focuses on metrics or short-term results, it not only weakens morale but also creates deep dissatisfaction in the company. For sustainable success, every organization needs a leadership system that respects and supports employees, creating a work environment where every individual feels valued and their contributions recognized.